Okay, good morning everyone. It's 9:30. We'll make a start. So I declare the council meeting CL23/15 open and welcome everyone here. We've got some special guests, the family of Nina here today. So I'll ask Chris to open with a karakia, please.
Tēnā koe kei te koromatua o tira, tēnā tātou kua tatu I runga I te reo karanga o tēnei kaupapa o te ata, me te whakahirehira o te tainga mai o tēnei me mahau a kei wainganui a tātou. Mākou te honore te whakatū whera tō tātou hui I runga I te tuku karakia, anō reira kei noi tātou. Tuku a te wairua kia rere ki ngā taumata, hei arahi I a tātou mahi I tēnei rangi, kia mau, kia ita, kia kore ai. Engaro, kia pūpuri, kia whakamaua, kia tīna, haumi e hui e tā ki e. Kia ora rā.
Thank you, Chris. So, as you'll be aware, this meeting is being live streamed, so please note that and the consequences of that. Okay, I've got an apology from Councillor Murray Benge and an apology for lateness from Deputy Mayor Scrimgeour. Can I have a mover and seconder for those, please? Councillor Joyce, Councillor Thwaites, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. I'll also note that Councillor Henry and Councillor Solar on Zoom. There's no consideration of late items. Does anyone have a declaration of interest for the meeting? No? Oh, Councillor Daly.
Potentially Te Puke War Memorial Hall lease.
Okay, thank you. So Councillor Daly's Te Puke Memorial Hall lease. There are no public excluded items. I'm not aware of anyone for public forum. So what we're going to do, we're going to change the order of business so we can witness Nina's declaration. So call for a move and a second that in accordance with standing orders, the order of business be changed and that item formal declaration of Nina Choran for appointment to the Te Puke Community Board be dealt with as the next item of business. Councillor Granger, Councillor Crawford. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. So we move to page 119 and the declaration of Nina Choran for appointment. So if Nina, if you'd like to join me at the front, we'll do that. So welcome.
Thank you.
I'll now invite you to read out your declaration and then you'll sign your name and I'll sign it and then we'll sign the other copy and that will be it. So if you'd like to read, please.
Kia ora, everyone. I, Nina Choran, declare that I will faithfully and impartially and according to the best of my skill and judgment execute and perform in the best interest of Te Puke community, the powers, authorities, and duties vested in or imposed upon me as a member of the Te Puke Community Board. By virtue of the Local Government Act 2002, the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act 1987, or any other act, dated at Tauranga this 3rd day of October 2023. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nina. So it's been an absolute pleasure to welcome you on board, and I hope you'll do a great job in representing and advocating for your community and Te Puke. And yeah, look forward to you being on our team and as elected members and doing a great job with it. So thank you, and great to see your family here too. So thank you
very much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we need to move the recommendations to receive that report and that the declaration is witnessed and signed. So can I have a move and second? Councillor Daly, Councillor Coxhead. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. So what I want to do now is just adjourn. We'll have a bit of morning tea and celebrate, if that's the right word, with Nina and her family, and then we'll crack on with the meeting after that. Okay, thank you. We'll be back in 10 to 10. Okay, so it's 10 to 10, so we'll get back to the meeting after the swearing in. So we're moving to page 8 and confirming minutes of the Projects and Monitoring Committee held on the 8th of August. Now, there's a minor change here where we need to note the amendment that Mr. John Lewis and Mr. Rick Hannay, not Hannah, of Te Puke Sports Club were speaking in public forum. So can I call for a mover and seconder to confirm those minutes, please? Councillor Thwaites, Councillor Daly. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Page 29, minutes of the Audit, Risk and Finance Committee on the 15th of August. Mover and seconder to confirm those minutes, please. Councillor Granger, Councillor Crawford. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Minutes of the Strategy and Policy Committee meeting on the 17th of August. Mover and seconder to confirm those minutes, please. I'll move those. And Councillor Wickers, all those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Minutes of Council on the 17th of August. Confirm those minutes and the signature be inserted. I'll move those. Deputy Mayor Scrimgeour, all those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Minutes of the council meeting on the 30th of August. Again, I'll move those. And Deputy Mayor Scrimgeour, all those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Which means we now move to the reports on page 79 and the draft speed management plan, where we have Callum McLean, Senior Transportation Engineer, to take us through this one. Thank you.
Kia ora. So this is just presenting to you the draft speed management plan. It's the first one Western Bay Plenty District has done, and it effectively replaces our speed limits bylaw. We're required to develop this plan under the Land Transport Rule. The approach that we've chosen to take is applying a mix of criteria to determine what we think the appropriate speed limits are for our local roading network. And that's around consideration of national guidelines around safe and appropriate speeds, our local kind of knowledge, and also community feedback. We've chosen to take a blanket approach where we're looking at 80 kilometres per hour in our rural areas and 50 kilometres per hour in our urban areas, with some exceptions being schools, marae, town centres and community identified areas. And just to also kind of note, through previous workshops on this, we'd identified Matakana Island speed limits being reduced to 60k, which isn't actually reflected in the draft speed management plan. So if you're wanting to continue with that approach, if you could just add that to the resolution, and we can ensure that's incorporated into the draft speed management plan before it goes out for consultation later this month. Happy to take any question.
So I'll open up to questions from members. Does anyone have anything to ask Cheryl or Callum? No, I did have two questions for myself, actually. So in the draft plan, it talks about Pahoa Road being 60 from the railway to the current 50 zone, and also Woodland Road being 60k all the way. Could you just explain perhaps where those ones have come from? Because they're deviations from from our blanket approach, and I wasn't aware how we'd got to those numbers.
So Woodland Road was identified via a public forum that you had in July, I think it was. There was a resident that had come and spoke to you around the speed limits on that road, and had been referred to this process as we would consider a reduction in the speed limit. So that's just reflecting that feedback from back then. Pahoa Road was feedback from the elected members during the workshops that we had, and or it was via an email that we had from elected member feedback around changes.
Councillor Granger.
I would suggest that Pahoa Road may have come about from the fact that the cycleway ends at the railway bridge, and the likely place people will cycle from there will be out to the beach and reserve. So I would imagine it's due to the fact that the cycles on the road shorten.
That makes sense. Councillor Granger, I appreciate that feedback. Councillor Daly.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chairman. Has any estimate of the likely cost to replace all the road signs to reflect these new speeds been attempted?
No. No, because we need to wait until the plan is adopted and we know exactly what the full scope of work is, and then we can put together an estimate.
And I think it's worth saying that's probably one of the advantages of taking a slightly more blanket approach than having lots of changes all over the district. So, but yeah, we'll see where that ends up. Any further questions? No? Okay, so I shall look for a mover and seconder for the 3 recommendations we have there, plus a further recommendation that council amend the draft to include roads on Matakana being 60 kilometres an hour limit. Councillor Joyce, Councillor Thwaites, are there any debate? Councillor Joyce.
Thanks to all for including Matakana Island, because there was a pretty, Murray and I were out there talking to the locals, and they're really clear they wanted lower limits. They accept that it's probably not going to be a lot of police enforcement, but they needed something to try to encourage the locals as much as anybody to drive at a reasonable speed on the island. I'd also like to commend the council for sticking to its guns a bit on rural roads and urban roads. You know, there was a push from Central in Wellington to lower them to quite stupid limits of 30 and 60. And I don't think people accept that. It would have been one of those rules where we would have a situation where people just wouldn't feel it was real and they wouldn't do it. If you've talked to any police officers about this, they're not interested in enforcing this either because they don't see them as reasonable. With any rule that we pass anywhere, you've got to have a degree of public acceptance for it to work, right? The rules on murder work because we all realise that murdering is unreasonable. Now that's at the far end of the extreme, but there's plenty of other rules around. It's got to be seen as reasonable by the people who are living those rules. We already have trouble on State Highway 2 with 80 kilometres per hour, which is also not really true at the moment because at some parts we're down to 60 and for extended areas we're down to 30, well beyond roadworks. And people don't follow those rules. I mean, if you drive State Highway 2 at 80k, and I do in my van, you get passed on double yellow lines, you get people up behind you trying to push you. So we need, particularly in areas like this, we need a degree of public acceptance. And the fact that these rules have been pushed on us from on high without any attempt to involve the public really, I think is a mistake. I'd also think it's a mistake that under these rules, we don't get the final say. So localism, once again, is going out the window, right? We put these into Waka Kotahi and they get the final decision. Whereas before with the bylaw process, it had many faults, it was long and it was involved and it was difficult to do, but at least the control was local within boundaries. And we've lost, yet again, local decision making to a central group of officials who will know best, it seems, or is believed for the whole country. And I don't think that's the best approach for governance.
Thank you, Councillor Joyce. Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Thwaites.
Yeah, I do support these changes. I think it's going to be very welcome, especially in the western side of our district, with the fish spine road network off State Highway 2. You know, the calming, it has slowed down on State Highway 2, and so it makes sense for the side roads to do it. Speaking closer to my home, the Te Puna community have chased lower speed limits for a number of years, and the 60k in that zone will be welcomed by many. It's good to see the schools. I know some work was done out at Rangiru School, I think, previously, and other schools now be treated the same. So I do think it's a good step forward, and I look forward to it being implemented.
Okay, before I was going to speak, but Councillor Cox, why don't you go ahead?
No, I just wanted to say I agree with everything Rodney just said. It's good to see common sense prevailed in this council, and as much as we can influence this, we have. So, and we have listened to the community where lower speed limits have been cried out for some time. So, yeah, well done to us.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. So I was going to add that Safety is important. That is the reason for the government's Road to Zero. I think there is a community feeling that that might have gone a little, the pendulum might have gone a little too far on that. So I'm happy that what we've gone out for consultation with strikes a balance between that, and particularly adds safety around schools, but is also pragmatic and realistic. So I hope, or it'd be interesting to see what the community say and provide the feedback on that. But I look forward to hearing that in due course. I would also note the uncertainty around new GPS and probably another GPS coming out or amended one, and change of government. So, and also, I would also like to note, because I'm sure lots of people will misunderstand, is that we don't control the state highways, and that's a further complication to the matter. So, Councillor Daly, you wanted to speak.
Yes, I'm supportive of this, these recommendations for both the reasons that Don has stated and Rodney has stated. I think productivity in our district is affected by the speeds on our roads, and I know currently we do have a lot of congestion, and it's difficult to maintain the posted speed limits in many cases, but you know, when we get all our infrastructure up to scratch in 50 years' time, then you know, it is a factor, especially out east, maybe not quite so much out west as Don has stated, but even talking to some rural people on some of our big, long, straight roads in rural side of the district where I live, that I've pointed out that this is happening, and they've been, you know, suggested that it's a bit crazy to drop some of the speeds to the extent that we're looking at. So more than anything, I would urge anyone that sees this consultation process to state their own personal cases and put a submission in, whether it's supportive or, you know, asking for a bit more common sense in some areas. I have spoken to several affected people who are looking for lower speed limits, even lower than what's proposed in this case, you know, around schools and Marae, and I believe that there is a place for those reductions as well, and they'll be accepted from those communities. So all in all, I think just try and circulate the submission and consultation process widely, and let's hear from the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Daly. So with no further debate, I'll put the motion for those 4 recommendations. That's basically put the speed management plan out for consultation. So all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. So move on to page 123, item 11.2, which is the Te Puke Memorial Hall lease. And I note here that Councillor Daly has declared his conflict there. So do we have our staff member to introduce this one?
I think we can take the report as read. If there are any questions, I'll endeavour to answer them.
Okay, so essentially it is to extend the lease with 5 plus 5 plus several times year lease on that. So does anyone have any questions for John? Councillor Joyce.
Sorry, being on the spot, but I just have a question about liability. You know, this used to be a council building, and you know, we're still the landlord. If something is done by a committee such as this that leads to some liability, could that come back on the council in any way? I mean, I don't need to answer now if it's because it's a horrible question.
Yeah, I will need to come back to you on that, Councillor.
Councillor Wickers.
So I'm assuming that the Hall Committee are all happy with this lease?
Yeah, it's been discussed thoroughly with them.
Thank you. Okay, so I think it's pretty straightforward. The idea that we wouldn't renew a lease for the Hall Society is probably pretty odd. So I'll look for a mover and seconder for recommendations 1, 2 and 3. Deputy Mayor Scrimger, Councillor Wickers. Is there any debates on this? Deputy Mayor Scrimger.
I'd just like to say that I think it's great to get this tidied up. As you read in the report, it's been out of time for 2 years now, so I think it's high time that we got it sorted. And given the discussions that have been held, I think it's a sensible proposal and good to see it come to fruition.
Thank you. And I'll just add that it's it's just common sense this to extend the lease. It's a great facility for the community and serves Te Puke well. So with that, I shall put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Moving now to item 11.3 on page 128, which is the petition calling for a citizens-initiated referendum on state highway maintenance. Rachel.
Mayor James, I wasn't intending to speak to the report. I think it's reasonably self-explanatory, but happy to answer any questions.
Okay. I mean, perhaps I should give a little bit of context. This was something that came through the Mayor Holdham from New Plymouth. To some extent, it has served its purpose in terms of putting the maintenance of state highways on the agenda, and now it is firmly in the sights of both the Labour Party and the National Party. But I think it's important that our people are given the opportunity to express their views in a potential referendum. So this would put the petition in libraries and service centres for people to sign if they so choose. Any questions for me or staff? Councillor Joyce.
I presume it's nil cost, is it?
It is.
Yeah,
It is.
to all intents and purposes, yeah.
It's literally putting some paper in a library. Okay, so Councillor Thwaites. Thank you. A seconder, Councillor Coxhead. Is there any debate? No? Oh, Deputy Mayor Scrimger.
Yeah, I just think I'd like to say it's a sensible decision to allow this opportunity. I think we've heard widespread criticism of the state of the highway network, and it would be churlish of us to refuse this opportunity. So I think it's a sensible decision.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Scrimger. So with that, I shall put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. So moving on to item 11.4 on page 135, which is the Community Committee change to terms of reference. And I would also like to, well, I'll ask Rachel to introduce this a little bit more, but I would also just signal right up front that I'm going to add a fourth recommendation, which would be that staff be directed to make all necessary consequential amendments to the terms of reference for other council committees in order to give effect to the new terms of reference for the Community Committee. That's just essentially to avoid double ups in one or two cases. But Rachel, did you want to speak further to this or introduce
Thank you,
it?
Mayor James. Again, the report is reasonably self-explanatory, but just to highlight that now that Council has adopted its community outcomes and its strategic priorities, it became apparent that there was a breadth of work, particularly the work that is undertaken through the community and strategic relationships team that didn't have a natural landing place for a committee. It also, in conversations with Mayor James, presented the opportunity to create a more purposeful and aligned community committee, noting that we've got the chairs of the community board that sit around this table for that committee as well. So the attachment makes it quite clear what the scope and responsibilities of that committee would be. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Rachel? No? Okay. I'll look for a mover and a seconder, then Councillor Granger, Councillor Crawford. Would you like to speak to those, anyone? No. Councillor Thwaites.
Congratulations, James. I think this is good tidying up of the issue. I think you tried something new and the forums weren't quite generating the workload that you quite envisaged. So I think it's marvellous and it'll be good to see some of that community stuff channeled into this committee, and I'm sure Councillor Murray Benj, I'll have to speak for her since she's not here today. She will be very enthusiastic to get her teeth into something. So well done.
Thank you, Councillor Thwaites. Councillor Crawford.
Yeah, too, just think this is really great. Especially for us who work in the community, this is an important aspect. And to actually make this this committee mean something, because it really hasn't quite got off the ground yet. I mean, we've been quite successful, but but you know, this is really great, and I just want to endorse it too. Just how you're forming this looks good to me. So.
Thank you, and I think it's worth noting that there are certain functions which council does which just haven't had the opportunity to be reported to us. Things like the Creative Communities Grant Scheme, which I know Councillor Henry is on, and you know that they have never been reported back to us, and I think it's a good chance for that to happen. And so some of the work in that community space, which is what the community committee is for after all. So if there's Councillor Daly, there we are.
Yes, I'd like to congratulate you, James, for following up and pushing this through. Thank you. I know both Margaret Murray Benj and myself, as Deputy Chair of the committee, have been suggesting that an increased scope for the terms of reference would be a good idea. And to be honest, this is beyond my wildest imagination, but I still felt there was maybe a couple of other things that could have been incorporated, but under the current scope, I think that may still be possible with a bit of arm twisting. But so I've also tried to...
Why am I taking my hands down?
I've also tried to communicate to Margaret so that she could read the terms. She wasn't able to open the link, as you might expect. However, she does say, thank you so much for your message, and delighted there will be changes to our committee's terms of reference. So
thank you for
approval from your chair people. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Councillor Henry's got a hand up, literally and metaphorically. So please go ahead, Councillor Henry.
Okay. I'd like to comment on this supporting of the community committee, because as you have said, it takes a lot of community involvement to bring ideas to the council. And this is, whilst you had already acknowledged that it was reporting to the committee, it didn't give it a clear focus and pathway for it. I'd like to say that at this time from the forum, I really appreciate the government staff that come to support us, because the little incidents that come in that are a service request are handled superbly, but there hasn't been a clear pathway for where we can direct some aspirational goals that come out of our community forum. So this is clearly the pathway that we were looking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henry. So with that, I shall put the motion, those 4 recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. And so we move to my report to council on page 141. Now I note that on the second of those paragraphs, the future for local government, I said I would give a verbal update, so I shall just do that now. And that was basically that there was a future for local government meeting in Wellington on the 17th and 18th of September, which went well, with lots of discussion and sharing of views. It is my opinion that good progress was made. I should be able to share with you shortly the feedback from that meeting shortly. There was lots of post-it notes and things shared, so that will be available soon. And I understand I got an email yesterday saying that LGNZ will be emailing all councils this week with a pack to help us have conversations and progress towards building a consensus at the next meeting on the 2nd of November. So that's where things are progressing. Obviously, the aim is to get a consensus position so that we can take it to the new government, whoever that ends up being. Okay, so with that, is there any further questions on that aspect or any other items in my report? Councillor Crawford.
Just on that conference, was that well attended?
It was, yes. There was I hesitate to guess at numbers, but a couple of hundred probably, or 100, 150.
Oh, good reflection.
Yes.
So,
Okay, if there's no further questions for me, I shall ask, well, I'll move that my report be received. Would anyone like to second that, please? Councillor Joyce. No debates. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. So now we need we move into the confidential section and call for a mover and seconder to exclude the public, please. Councillor Crawford, Councillor Wickers. All those in favour, please.